Hi everyone, it's Giri. Let's have a look at a game from round 2 of the 2023 Norway Chess Tournament. This is the Armageddon game between Anish Giri on the white end and Fabiano Caruana. The classical game they played in round 2 was a draw. That's why they had to play this Armageddon. The winner of it earns an additional half point towards the tournament standings. Time controls for this game: Giri has 10 minutes, Caruana 7, and there's a 1-second increment beginning at move 41. Black has draw odds, and this, of course, has a significant influence on the strategies for each side. White really does need to press for a win. On board, we have a closed Catalan, not the most common way to arrive at the closed Catalan, but here we are. D takes c4 follows, queen c2, and this baby move, a6, preparing a b5 advance. b5 is stopped in this game with a4. If queen takes c4 in this position, b5 can be played with tempo, and after the queen moves, black is able to get on this long diagonal and try and tame the best piece in the position, white's Catalan bishop. Play in this position will revolve around the c5 square, or really the c5 pawn break. Black would like to get that move in and exchange his half-dead pawn for a perfectly healthy pawn. Okay. In this game, a6 met with a4, so was it worth it? Black took one step with the idea to play b5, and b5 is shut down with this guy going 2 steps. Well, with every pawn move, there's a positive and a negative, and the negative here is that b4 is now a hole. Okay. Black now follows with bishop d7. He's trying to get on the diagonal with these 2 moves. Trying to move the b pawn in this position, well, the b pawn is, you'll note, not advancing in this case with tempo, like the variation with b5 attacking the queen. This would give white time to play knight e5, and this is pretty irritating. So, goes about it with bishop d7. Queen takes c4, follows in this game. If the knight still hops into e5, the bishop's still going to go here, and we could have a totally different ball game ahead, totally different structure. Okay, another path the game could take. In this game, it is simply queen takes c4, bishop c6, bishop f4. It's a strong piece on f4. There's some coordination on c7. It's challenged straight away with bishop d6. And white simply follows with knight c3. Capturing the bishop on d6, probably not a good idea. Black could recapture with a pawn. Small pawn center. Open c-file. This queen's probably not feeling so comfortable. There's going to be a valuable tempo right around the corner once the rook is on c8. She's going to have to move again. You also cut out a key improving move from the knight. Okay, so the tension simply remains. White continues to develop, allows black to take on f4, and white is okay. He says, I'm okay taking on a somewhat compromised kingside structure. This newly opened g-file, half-open g-file, I'm going to try and use that to my advantage. Okay, so black is on move here. Throw this to you as a pop quiz. Can you spot what Caruana's next move is, move 12? Feel free to pause the video. Okay, no crazy tactics here. This is more of a positional test. His move is a5. Doing what? Guarding the b4 square with a pawn. It's a hole, and now there's a pawn controlling that square. Okay. Next up, we have e3. There is a central majority that white has 2-1, but to try and, let's say, advance this central majority, that wouldn't be a good idea. Frequently, it is a good idea. When you have a majority, you set it in motion. But trying to get in some move like e4 would not be a good choice, because that would leave this square right here, and it would become a hole. and right around the corner you could see a knight getting there. That would be a disaster for white. So it's one of those, proceed with caution, don't try and just see it as, I have a majority, let's push it, to recognize the big gap, the big weakness that would be created in playing e4. So it's the more solid here. e3 controls the center points. f4, f4, and d4. From here, can you guess what black's next move is? Move 13. Here we go. Knight a6. See what's happening here? Do you see the progression that's happening with these last handful of moves from move 7? We're at move 13 now. White goes with h3. Cuts out any knight jump. It's looking at king h2. Knight b4. So, how did we get here? How did this knight get to b4? It dates all the way back to move 7 with that baby move, a6. a6 did what? Provoked a weakness on b4. What's the next step? Control that hole with the pawn. Got it. With the pawn on a5. Final step? Put a piece there, and the piece is going to love you. Because it can't be scared away. There's no white pawns that could scare the knight away. And who knows? Maybe a fork is right around the corner if white isn't careful. All right. This is a strong post for the black knight. From here, king h2, g6. Black is already anticipating white's idea, white's plan here to do something on the g file. So this is a strong point now on g6. There's also a square for the king if he needs it. All right, g6 on board, rook g1. I like the timing here. This was instructive for me to see this. Rook g1 is played. Notice this guy is not yet moving until this guy's on g1. Why is that? King e7, knight g5. What's happening here? Well, after bishop takes bishop, the rook is the one that gets to recapture, and now this square is immediately opened up for the doubling of the rooks on the g file. So if white was moving this knight before this rook was on g1, we'd have bishop takes and the king would have to be recapturing, and the king doesn't want to be on this g file. Okay. Also, this knight move, I should mention, the knight going to g5 rather than e5, it has an idea. His idea is to remove this kingside defender. A knight on f6 is a fantastic defender for the kingside. So he has an eye on knight e4, and the knight from e4 also watches out for the c5 pawn break. All right, from here we have rook c8. Black is trying to get this break in. What other way is there for black to try and open up a line for the rooks? Okay, it's not going to be e5 for as long as these two are around. Maybe e5 later if black can get rid of this pawn, though. But for right now, there's a huge grip over e5. First things first, rook c8. Prep work for c5. This is really a battle of ideas, battle of plans, this Armageddon game. Knight e4. b6. More prep work for c5. And now in comes rook to g5. Computer's not a big fan of this particular move. It's designed to watch out for this c5 pawn break. As it turns out, this isn't actually stopping c5. I should mention the rook on g5. What move would white like to see in this position? A move like h6. A move like h6 would weaken g6 and make the idea of h4, h5 that much more effective. So my point here, if you're playing as black, don't be too tempted to try and kick this rook off of this file. Probably better to stay strong on g6 and anticipate this serious pressure on the g file with the rooks, with the pawn. Okay, The suggestion by the engine here is to actually take on f6 first, and then continue from this position with an eye on maybe playing knight e4 later, maybe rook g5 and then double. Okay, he doesn't exchange knights here. He goes with rook g5, knight takes knight, knight takes knight, and c5 is still hitting. So how many are on it? 1, 2, 3, 4, and there's only 3 here supporting it. But this here is not a reliable defender of the c5 square. So there's this idea of f5, which actually cuts out the knight, gives the knight a kick, and it cuts off the rook from seeing the c5 square. So this is where there starts to be a shift in the evaluation, and when you look at it, when you use some reasoning here, you could kind of understand why that is so. This earlier move, rook g5, was designed to do what? Try and prevent the c5 advance. Well, c5 is still hitting, so it sort of makes this move, in a way, turns out to be a bit of a waste. c5 can still be played. From here we have d takes c5, and now the in-between move thrown in, f5, kicking away the knight, interfering with the rook, seeing the c5 square. I like the order, by the way. The computer says you can maybe even go with f5 in this position first, but there's some more you would have to calculate as black if you're going with f5 first and then c5. Okay, if you go with f5 first, knight c3, and then c5, there's this as a possible pawn break. But playing c5 right now, this is not an option. Okay, in this game it is d takes c4. So softening up, you might say, white's grip over the e5 square. So this starts to maybe be more of a possibility. The e5 advance, f5 first, kicking the knight back. Moving forward would be losing, diving in here. Losing not because of queen takes knight. White wouldn't take back the queen because rook takes queen and black is up a knight. White would have queen takes knight in this position to get out of that tactic, but the win here would be to simply take on c5 and remove the defender of the knight. Queen here, you have multiple wins, knight c2, rook d5. Okay, can't go forward, knight. Gotta go back, c3 it is. Rook takes c5, the position has opened up. The center's opened up. White is better centralized. White is really all in. His chips are all in here on the king side, this idea to do something along the g file. Queen is kicked back, and here we go. e5 on board. This pawn really wasn't doing a whole lot on this square, e6. It's watching over f5, but do we need that? We have plenty of security over f5. You might say it's defending the king somewhat along this diagonal, but really isn't a great way for the queen to make use of that diagonal. This really is the way to go. Strike f4, try and remove this guy, maybe get the king. Give a check on the diagonal. White's play is all in on the g file. White's trying to open up the center and open lines for the rooks to maybe get to the second rank to kind of sneak in this kind of direction. Okay. White doubles up on the g file. And again, this is only a blitz or a rapid game. Really, as it comes out to the starting time control, at least, it's rapid for white, and black is really in blitz mode right in the beginning. But yeah, fast time control game. The reaction here is king h8. This is considered the second best move, but really it's in a way like the best move when you think about it. If you don't go with king to h8, if you instead capture here, this is the best move, by the way. This would mean you'd have to calculate the following line. And this is not at all easy to do. Maybe in the classical you get away with this, but yeah, you definitely need time to know that you're okay finding this as an only move, and after this move, finding this as an only move, working out all the details here, knowing that there isn't a great discovered check for white. All right. The best move, let's just say, is played here. Two humans going at it. Get off of the G file. Don't allow this to be hitting with check now. Okay. Queen f3 is played. If the rook captures, in this case, black would be able to defend. This does not hit with check. There's multiple ways to defend here. Queen h7 is one. Queen h7, if rook g5, black has this resource to stop the skewer with rook h5. Okay, so this is not working. The sacrifice on g6. White still needs a few tempi before there's a serious threat posed to the black king. He needs moves h4, h5, the capture, before it really has black's attention. In the game, queen f3, e takes f4, pawn takes f4. Looks pretty ugly here. Double isolated pawns, but this guy is still around to shield the king. If white had captured with the queen, it runs into this irritating move, knight d3, really hitting a lot of stuff, undermining possibly the knight support once you wipe out the b pawn. This may seem tempting, giving a check, but there's knight e5, and look at what might be right around the corner. Talk about a massive fork if the knight gets to f3. Yeah, this might seem tempting, but you could always kick the queen away from pinning the knight. And in fact, the queen is basically going to be trapped in this position after rook d8. How do you like that? It just goes to show the great centralization here of the black pieces. All in for white. The center control is what's going to triumph here. Okay. In this game, it is e takes d4, rook d8, and here we go with h4. We could probably look a little less now at the sacrifices on g6 now that h4 is in, because this is always a possibility. Queen takes h4, and that would immediately influence the coordination with the rooks. King is going to have to go in between them, or the rook is going to have to block. So this is no longer, it's less effective now with the pawn on h4, one step away from the king. Okay, in this game we have rook d3, and the reply here is queen a8. Objectively best. Funny move here. I don't know if both players missed this, or both players maybe had calculated that this wasn't maybe even going to lead anywhere. Again, we have to take into account that this is an Armageddon. White has to try and find some variation that's going to win. The best move in this position, objectively, is, can you guess which move? Feel free to pause the video. Okay, here we go. Queen, well, not queen there. Queen is the move. Queen a8 is the move played in the game. Queen h5 is the best move in this position. Pretty flashy, okay? If you take the queen, there's going to be a mate in one. That's the idea. And this, I guess, this variation I'm highlighting is your little reminder to take some extra care whenever you move that final rook from your back rank. This was the first moment. It's a bit more vulnerable. There isn't a rook on d8 anymore. So is there a way to make use of these back rank weaknesses? There is. Queen h5 seems like it's an out of the blue type move, but it's there. And nearby there's this idea. There's ways to defend for black, but in any case, this is objectively the best move. Queen h5. In this game, queen a8, check. Rook falls back to d8, and white's next move here is a blunder, and the conversion here is pretty good here for black. The best move in this position for white is rook to e1, saying if you take my rook, I take your rook. We exchange in a fancy way, holds this around an even position. Okay. I guess in general what's happening here, the computer's suggesting this isn't going to be working, so try and, centralize a rook, go in that direction, but okay, in this game it's queen g2, and black simply goes in after this f-pawn. So I didn't mention this, when this capture happened, I was pointing out it's still shielding the king, but it is now also a hole because of those earlier moves, e5. The capture on that square, the recapture, as soon as there was that recapture on f4, now becomes a hole, and black is laser focused on it from here. Knight d3. You could do a knight comparison. The black knight outranks this guy. The forward moves are under control, and what are you doing about knight takes f4? Can't really do anything. Queen f3, rook c4, queen g3, rook takes f4. Black's now on f2. f3. One final move, and white resigns. h6. This rook is stuck. What do you do? White resigns in this position. If you capture, if the game continued and you captured on g6, there would follow rook takes on h4 check, king g2, and how strong would this knight be on f4? Well, the queen has to give herself up now for the knight, otherwise it's going to be mate. That's how strong. So if you go to f2, for example, there's going to follow rook d2 check, king f1, and rook d1 check. King here, that's a slick mate with queen c5, and if knight takes rook, queen e2 would be mate. It's not a 3-point knight. A knight on f4 is probably worth more than 4. Okay. h6, final move of this Armageddon game. An interesting one. I like seeing these faster time control games. White had to go all in with this format, and it simply didn't work out, but very instructive to see how the approach is here, the battle of plans, the opening up of the center. This was black's way to get at the white king first. Anyhow, feel free, as usual, to leave any feedback to this video in the comments section below. I hope you enjoyed it and maybe took a thing or two away. That's all for now. Take care. Bye.